WNST. He's a familiar voice for all things Festivus here. He, of course, has one of the many folks I've had here this week with the Super Bowl 35 ring. We welcome our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation back on. He is from Los Angeles back to Baltimore. He'll be on the sidelines with Amber Theo Harris on Sunday for all things NFL Network. Coach, we got playoff football here. These are the rare days, home playoff games. We don't get a lot of those around here, do we?
That's great. I'm thrilled that the Ravens get to have a first-round home playoff game. They deserve it. The response they had to the Cleveland game was spectacular. And the fact that they're playing a Charger team, I like the matchup. You know, the way they played the Chargers when they went out to the West Coast. Chargers are going to play better. I don't know that they can play better enough the way the defense and the way the running offense is going right now.
Well, we all sit in the locker room and ask Eric Weddle about what he could possibly know about Phillip Rivers and about that offense, but it sure looked like, and I'll give credit to Wink, I'll give credit to all the players, but the guy wearing the helmet, and there's something probably about that relationship and that sort of a matchup that it feels to me like the defense really won the first battle early on, and they're going to need to win that battle because Phillip Rivers wins a lot of these battles, doesn't he?
He does, and he's been successful on the road. But what they did that was so brilliant last time, and keep in mind now the Ravens coming into it, as brilliant as they've been defensively, they were near the bottom of the league in terms of turnovers. They hadn't generated a lot of turnovers, and obviously the Los Angeles Chargers had been one of the top 2 or 3 teams in terms of generating big plays. So what do the Ravens do? They come out and have a day where they get 3 turnovers, start the game and end the game with turnovers by Phillip Rivers, and Phillip Rivers did not complete a pass over 20 yards in that game. That formula, that'll beat a lot of people. There's no way the Chargers can come into Baltimore, and if they don't flip those numbers, in other words, they don't get the 3 and 4 big plays, like we saw Cleveland do, and don't turn the ball over, that's the only way they got a chance of winning.
Coach, I've never seen an offense operate out of 2nd and 2 and 2nd and 3 and 2nd and 4 more than this. I mean, the first down devastation. If people want to talk about third down numbers because they're on the stat sheet, yeah, they're 46% on third down or whatever that is. The reason they're there is because they're always in 3rd and 1 or 2 or 3. They're never in 3rd and 18, and that's about either not kicking the ball around or not having penalties, but certainly not having sacks and not having a traditional offense. And I've told everybody this story here the last couple weeks. I know it's been a few weeks since I had you on. I remember your first press conference, your first day here, talking about Scott Mitchell, talking sort of off the cuff about Barry Sanders, and how many times the Lions were in 2nd and 13, 2nd and 14 with Barry Sanders, because sometimes that offense went backwards. This offense is the antithesis of that. It almost never goes backwards on first down.
Yeah, it's the classic formula in terms of staying ahead of the chains. You're right, and you know, if you're averaging 3 and 4 yards a pop, now you're going to be in those convertible third downs and then break the big plays like they've done consistently, and that's right in Lamar Jackson's wheelhouse. That's where the challenge for the Chargers, like every team that play the Ravens right now, is that you got to build the number count to stop the run. Now you leave yourself a little vulnerable because Lamar Jackson has shown that he can make some plays down the field, but you got to know defensively, and they're a good team as the Chargers are. They were the best defensive play that the Ravens played, or the best defensive team that the Ravens played the last month and a half of the season, because up to that point, 5 of their 6 wins were against teams that were in the bottom 4th, bottom 5th. I mean, 26th, 27th, 30th, 32nd in the league in defense. But this Charger defense, as was the Cleveland defense, those were legitimate defenses. So they've shown that they can step up to that, but the challenge is for these defenses to commit to the number count because you got to stop that run. Otherwise, you're going to bleed to death slowly.
I've had a lot of your compadres on this week. You know, Flynn and Stokely, Phil Savage, a lot of people from your era and your team, and trying to find, the similarities between a defense that's number 1 and a defense that was legendary and an offense that, I would say maybe in your era, you were more inclined to punt than maybe this team. This team doesn't want to punt. This team just wants to get the next first down and keep the ball. And obviously, keeping Phillip Rivers or whomever that quarterback is, Matt Ryan, whatever whatever it is, off the field, you take the $30 million player and you say, well, we're going to give you 7 or 8 series here in this game, not 12 or 13, and you're going to have the ball 20, 22 minutes, not 30, 35 minutes. It's changed everything here, but the defense has been the real benefactor, being out on the field 40, 45, 50 snaps a game. That's changed everything, the way that they can move the chains. Even when they only kick a field goal, as they only did twice in the first half against the Chargers, it was still sort of enough to beat them.
Yeah, they've got, and that's a formula that a lot of people, me included, would be tested in thinking whether that could still work in today's NFL with the rule changes and the way you protect the quarterback and the explosiveness of some of the offenses we're seeing. But this is unique territory. And I've been telling people all along now, and I'm still a skeptic with regards to Lamar Jackson's ability to develop as a down-the-field thrower. And we'll talk all next year about whether he can stay healthy over a 16-game schedule and throw the ball well enough to sustain that to continue to make a run. But I'll say this, the formula they've got right now, can they do this for 3 more weeks? You're darn right they can, and they've proven they can do it. The challenge is they're now a little bit different than our 2000 team, is they're going to face a pretty good cadre of quarterbacks and offenses between now and then, the likes of which could very well, not beginning with a Phillip Rivers, and then maybe, a Tom Brady conceivably, and then a very hot Pat Mahomes, or even a Deshaun Watson that's playing so well, or an Andrew Luck that has really had a resurgence given the protection they've had. So the quarterback and the level of offenses and the level of quarterback play they're going to face going down the way week after week is going to be a challenge.
Well, look, I don't want to put you in a position to second guess John here, but that's what we do on the radio. You always loved the 6'5" quarterback that could throw the ball 80 yards down the field. That's you, and that's the history of you. But I don't know that a lot of coaches would have gone this direction or would have been wooed in this direction. And as you've said, if I would have told you, hey, we're going to build an offense, we're going to run around like Navy does and play rugby, and we're going to win 10 games and get to the playoffs, and we're going to do it with defense, we're just going to run around. Nobody's looking to run an offense this way. Even with Lamar Jackson back in Indianapolis in a draft night, it still was about, well, at some point, he's going to have to throw the ball 30, 35 times a game. At some point, he can't be running the ball 15 or 20 times a game. And to your point, we'll talk about that later, but just making a short-term conversion to this, it feels very counterintuitive to what all of the intelligent people in football would say about the league, the pass, you got to pass. This has been something that was very unscripted by them, but I don't know that every head coach would have signed on for this, right?
Well, and we'll see how it plays out going down the way here, but you got to give a great deal of credit to Marty Morningwig and Greg Roman, who've totally adapted the offense and bought into it. People have been talking about the college system coming into the NFL for years, and it hasn't. It's been reminiscences of it to a degree, and until somebody wins a championship that way and doesn't win the championship from the quarterback position, from the pocket, then I think, me included, the conventional thinking, people will reserve buying into this. Although with the kind of success that he's having, if they want to continue it, it will create a wave of teams saying, okay, if we're not going to go after one of those Hall of Fame quarterbacks because there's not a lot of them, we're going to go this route. And whether teams, begin to start to catch up with it and the athleticism of the NFL, we'll see all that. Like I said, over a 16-game schedule next year, going from Jump Street, where Lamar Jackson's the quarterback and teams have an entire offseason to prepare for it and adjust themselves, and we'll see how much improvement Lamar Jackson makes. That'll all be answered next year. But for the next 3 weeks to get into the Super Bowl, I like the chances of the Baltimore Ravens with that. Not good defense, great defense. That's a big component here. It's one thing to run that type of offense, but you have to have great defense to win the game running the ball in the National Football League. Now, we did in our Super Bowl. That was the key thing, obviously. People forget we were the number 2 ranked rushing team in the league that year. We didn't turn the ball over. So that formula could work. Now, does it do in today's game? We'll see. But I like the matchups across the way for the Ravens. Biggest matchup I would worry about actually would be Houston. I think they go into Foxborough next week and they beat a very kind of old and tired-looking New England Patriot team with the way this team plays. I like, you gotta, I'm not going to say they're favored, but you gotta like the fact that they've been to Kansas City, so they played a pretty darn good game and got close to pulling that one out. you got to like those matchup as well. So I like the way this thing lays out for the Ravens.
Can you imagine Belichick getting his ass kicked by the Navy offense?
Oh, well, it'd be, and that part of it he would probably appreciate, but just not at the time.
Well, yeah. Coach Billick is here. You can, of course, follow him out on Twitter as well as at the NFL Network. And, you know, I'm going to ask the stupidest question. Why is this so hard to stop? I mean, I know everybody's asking that, but I'm just going to ask you the dumbest question in the room. Like, if you are the other team's coach and you got to stop it, and I keep hearing, well, they're the nightmare. Nobody wants to play him. Belichick won't want any part of it. Nobody will want a part of him. What is it about this at 50,000 feet that you'd look at and say, how in the hell is this working for 8 weeks?
Well, the combination is, like we said, begins with great defense. You got to begin with how do I and Cleveland set the template. You got to get big plays down the field in the way that you kind of make it. They get very good protection. Mayfield created just a couple little instances where he could hang on to the ball a little bit and get the big plays down the field. So it begins with that. You're not going to beat this defense. I don't care how well you stop their offense. You're not going to beat the Baltimore Ravens dinking and dunking the ball underneath without getting big plays down the field and think you're going to consistently run the ball. It's just not going to happen. So it begins on the defensive side. Now, on the offensive side, in conjunction with that, you're right. You've got to totally commit to a +1 defense. By that, I mean you got to put enough people in the box to outnumber their blockers on every single snap. Otherwise, they're going to get that 4 and 5 yards, and they're going to gash you. Now, does that leave you vulnerable to possibly then the play-action fake with the big play down the field? Yes. But if I've got to, if I'm betting the farm on it, if I'm putting my paycheck on it, I'm going to bet on adding that +1 defense to stop the run on a consistent basis and believe that Lamar Jackson and the offense aren't going to make enough big plays to match up with a good offensive team that is able to make some big plays on the other side. That's why I bring up the defense. You know, it does work in conjunction. But I'm not sure right now, if I had to bet, I'm going to make you make those big plays down the field. I'm not going to let you run the ball.
I'm a little dissatisfied with the way Lamar's taking care of the ball. You talk about we don't turn the ball over, we don't turn the ball over. Every coach will say that. With the game on the line and the season on the line, somehow the ball wound up on the ground the other day. The ball wound up on the ground in Kansas. The ball's wound up on the ground every week. We've fallen on it. Sometimes we haven't. But I am very nervous about that part of it. And the part that nobody's talked about so much, which is you got a quarterback that's pretty decorated here trying to climb the mountain in Phillip Rivers, and you've got a rookie, the youngest quarterback to ever start a game. That's usually a storyline unto itself, even if it's Andrew Luck in his first game or Peyton Manning if he's a rookie. Doesn't matter who that is. It's still someone that's never played in a playoff game. For that alone, I think there's some marks against the Ravens to say that you could go win these kinds of games with a rookie quarterback who has really had a propensity for fumbling lately.
And that's a fair observation. The biggest thing that rookies have to adjust to is they get through the preseason. They feel like, okay, I get it now. I get the speed of the NFL. And then they get into their first regular season game, and it's like, whoa, how did this crank up? You know, what did I miss in those 4 or 5 preseason games? Well, now you go through an entire season going, okay, I get it. I know how this works. And then you get into a playoff game. It's like, are you kidding me? And each one gets successively tougher. If you don't think that a wild card game, the intensity, the passion, the speed, the veracity of it, and the caliber of competition, with each week, then you got to go into Foxborough? Are you kidding me? And then whatever after that, I mean, it just stair steps. And he's been in the big arena before. He knows what that's like, but I don't know until you've lived it. I think yours is a fair observation that's something he's going to have to account for. And yes, you're going to make those plays. You got to play your game, but that kind of play that he ended the game against the Cleveland Browns is going to get you beat versus San Diego, New England, Kansas City, Houston, these good teams.
It's all been purple flamingos and Festivus this week, and the city's going nuts and all that. But and I think this is the first time in 4 days we've even brought it up, like literally as to it's been a little sloppier than you'd want it to be, but it's been so successful you can't argue with it, right? And I looking around at the rest of the league, there is no super team out there on either side of the bracket. I know the Saints are going to be tough with Drew Brees to go in there and beat them, but there are a lot of decent teams on that side of the bracket as well. This is as wide open a tournament as I can remember in recent years.
It is, because everybody's got their freckles. You know, everybody's got their from the pimples from the standpoint of, you look at Kansas City, obviously that defense has to be a concern. Can that defense hold up against a really good offense, whether it's the running offense of the Baltimore Ravens, whether it's the passing offense when they obviously get to a Tom Brady, or even as a Phillip Rivers, or certainly an Andrew Luck. Can that defense hold up? When you look at New England, yeah, it's Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. How do you ever pick against them? But this is not a dominant team. Gronkowski does not look the same. Brady doesn't look the same. The defense doesn't look the same. Now, they may be wolf in sheep's clothing and then get into the playoffs and revert to form. But at least to this point, they don't look that way. I think the best, most complete team is Houston in terms of the way Deshaun Watson's playing, the way they're protecting him now, and that defense is legitimate as well. So when you look around the AFC as to who is maybe the most complete team, obviously the Ravens a little bit differently, but really good defense with a really good offense and a quarterback presence, the Houston team would be the biggest concern for me.
1-5, 3-5, 4-5 in the playoffs. I mean, and I asked John about this at the presser on Wednesday, and he didn't really have an answer, and even said there's a longer answer, but it's not for now. There really is something about keeping your chin up when you're 1-5. I mean, you're a hell of a football coach. You could bring a team back from 1-5, and you probably have some pretty special guys in that room, because that's a very, very difficult thing to overcome when it starts to pile up on you, right? And you start to lose, and you're hearing it and feeling it everywhere, and you're feeling the pressure of having to win. A lot of these teams have really gone through a lot of fire already before January.
And as I tell people all the time, I really truly believe, and you'll remember in our first Super Bowl year where we lost 3 in a row, we lost 4 out of 5, we didn't score the touchdown in the month of October or whatever, that if we not gone through that, then we were on this 11-game run to the Super Bowl. If we had not gone through that crucible and hung together as a team, if it had been win a couple, lose one, win a couple, lose one, to end up with the 12-4 record that we had, I don't think that team would have gone to a Super Bowl. But the fact that it was challenged that way and came out of it and could take pride and realized, okay, what worse can you do to us? We've seen the world. We've stood at the abyss. And we stepped back away from the ledge, and we were able to do that. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with the mentality of a team going forward.
But I know Black Monday's always difficult on you and anybody in your community and coaches, but, I mean, boy, oh boy, you've been around this a long time. I've been around it a long time. Seeing Marvin on Monday, and then, your buddy Vic Fangio might get a job, right? So, I mean, it really is like an escalator going up and down. This is a week for pay for coaches, not play, right?
Yeah, and that's the hard thing about the wild card is it begins with, obviously, and now with 8 coaches. It's going to be a challenge for these clubs. I don't know that I could identify 8 guys right now to say, yes, these are going to be the next coaches in waiting. Some people are going to rush to judgment to get ahead of the curve. Some people are going to wait and dally a little bit and end up on the back end and probably having to make some surprise hires because the top candidates have been chewed up. So, yeah, this is a tough time of year because either you, someone you know, or care about is going through this, not just head coaches, but assistant coaches, as we talk about all the time. It's just an unfortunate time to be in the profession.
A lot of football this weekend and next weekend and beyond. Coach, we'll see you again next week, and we'll get on the road to Atlanta. Appreciate the time, and fly safe.
Sounds great.
We'll see him in Baltimore. Coach Brian Billick will be here in Baltimore along with Amber Theo Harris from the sidelines, NFL Network, anchoring the coverage close to home, as they say. You can follow him at Coach Billick on Twitter, as well as for our friends at the Living Classrooms Foundation and all that they do. Learning by doing is what James Bond and our friends at Living Classrooms say. Learn more at livingclassrooms.org about our support and others' support here in the community of one of the great organizations here in our community. You can find me out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.